started. Good morning, everyone. We are getting settled. Hope you've had your coffee or water or tea or whatever you want to have for a snack or drink this morning. You got a few seconds if you want to get settled, go refill. So we're going to let people come on in from the waiting room. While we're waiting, if y'all want to test out the chat, say hi, say good morning, let us know where you're at. I always love this part of the webinar when we all just kind of get a chance to sit and say hi. And we get so many people, so many interesting logins from all over the world, especially because we work with so many military people. We get people calling in from bases at different times, different time zones, different states, different countries. So
I see the numbers coming in. Awesome.
Yeah.
And
I see my friend Roman on the line. Anybody been cutting ties off of you anymore, Roman? So so if you are an advocate and you have ever gone to training in South Padre, every now and then you gotta be careful. They like to cut your ties off because you're training at the island. You gotta relax and let loose. So I tell people don't wear a tie at the island. So all these organizations. So
thank you. It's 10 a.m. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Me too. Let's get going here. So if you don't know me yet, my name is Crystal Garcia and I'm the content coordinator here at TASA and I run our online webinar series. We are halfway through the SAB Survivor Summer webinar series. So this is part 3 of 6. We have 3 more left. We'll take a little bitty break to kind of round things out for the end of the month, and then we'll come back in September with 3 more series to close this one out. So for all of y'all that were here today, as some of us may be closing out grants or getting monthly reports in and all the things we do at the last part of the month. We see you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us. This morning, our presenter is Dr. Lavinia Masters. She will give us a ton of information about herself. Lavinia is a pretty powerful person and she has a wonderful story. She's a great speaker and a great friend to Tasa. And she is one of our co-coordinators for our Survivor Advisory Board. So I've worked with Lavinia for a long time, so it's always great to hear from her and to see what she is working on. So with that said, it is 10:01. I'm going to turn this session over to her, and y'all have a great morning. So.
Thank you, Crystal. Good morning, everyone. I am Lavinia Masters, as Crystal said, and I'm excited to be here with you guys and to share with you just a little housekeeping. Crystal will do the chats, and if there's something imperative that you need to ask me, she will interrupt. Otherwise, we're going to hold all the questions until the end so I can kind of stay focused because I am a person that lives in my ADHD a lot of times, and so I try not to be too distracted. But I'm excited to be here this morning and to share with you, and thank you for getting up and having your coffee and breakfast with me as we talk about Unbroken, resilience, justice, and the power to rise. Insights from myself, Lavinia Masters, survivor, advocate, author, international speaker. A lot goes with it, but I'm gonna get into my story because that's a part of my presentation today, so I won't go all right now at the beginning. So we're going to explore healing, advocacy, and leadership after trauma. So bear with me. I'm not the technical person. Yeah, I just can't hit enter then. Let's do it this way. Crystal. There you go. Okay. My agenda highlights today is fostering resilience in survivors of sexual trauma, systemic barriers to justice and healing, the Lavinia Masters Act of Survivor Advocacy and Action, and transforming pain into purpose. Building support networks, encouraging connection with trusted friends, our support groups to reduce isolation and provide emotional validation. These are part of fostering our resilience as survivors of sexual trauma. We can have therapeutic interventions that introduce trauma-informed counseling, cognitive behavioral therapy, expressive arts therapy to help survivors, etc. All things we're going to get into. The Lavinia Master Act story and all of that information is what we're going to dive into. But these are just some of the agenda highlights I wanted to put on. And before we really dive in, I want to do our opening invocation that I am unbroken. I say that peace is not passive. Peace is a fortress. I have learned the enemy doesn't come always aloud. He sometimes creeps in quietly with doubts, distractions, and little lies meant to steal my joy, to discredit my progress, and to push me into self-sabotage. And these are just mantras, things that I do to help me with my resiliency as I continue to do the fight and the work as an advocate, also a survivor first of something so heinous. And so I have to keep myself grounded within the work and not able to take things personal or always have to go back into that empty, dark space that I once lived as a victim of sexual violence. And here I choose to choose. My talking points is I didn't choose the trauma, but I choose the testimony, which means I didn't choose what happened to me. And none of us as victims of or survivors of sexual trauma chose it to happen, but we choose the testimony. We're deciding we're going to do something about it. We're going to speak out about it. This happened. This session is not about what happened to me. It's about what we do next. So I'm not here just to share a story about me and woe is me and all the things that I've been through and give me excuses to act a certain way. I'm here to say, what do we do next with this? Because when one person is violated by sexual violence, to me, we're all violated when the systems fail us and when we fail one another to support each other in the process. So let's rise together with purpose, with power, and with a plan is what I hope for us leave here today. And I'm so sorry, this technical stuff is not my friend. So the Lavinia Masters Act, Survivor Advocacy and Action. I am Lavinia Masters. I am a survivor of sexual assault. My story goes when I was 13 years old. We had just moved back from the Houston area, and we moved in with relatives that lived in the West Dallas project area. And when we moved here, we couldn't have been there more than 2 weeks, I want to say, because it was the summertime. And my family, the adult family member and her fiance had a 2-bedroom, and they were upstairs. and my mother and my stepfather were upstairs sleeping. Myself, since I was the oldest at 13, was downstairs on the couch sleeping with my siblings right there on the floor. So in the middle of the night, when all of this occurred, the rapist came through, and I'm sorry, the word rapist, I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to trigger, but I know this is the work that we do. But I guess I should have given a disclosure before I said that. But my perpetrator came through the window in the middle of the night. I don't know where he came from. I don't know how he chose me. I don't know if it was just an opportunity. Had he seen me earlier throughout the day or what have you, because we hadn't lived in this area long. But I was awoken by someone with a knife to my throat and someone ripping my underwear from me and my legs apart. It was a very traumatic experience, and I don't want to harp on that because I really want to make sure I get to the presentation today. But it was a very traumatic experience to have to go through that as a child of sexual violence, as a child at 13 years old, to go through such a heinous sexual violence, and then had already experienced childhood sexual abuse when I was younger. So this kind of threw my world in a disarray, have to deal with it in this magnitude. What happened after that? When I thought nothing else bad could happen, it did. I had an encounter with the law enforcement. And so in this instance, when we called the police out to come do the investigation, I couldn't bathe, I couldn't do anything. My mother said I had to wait until the police came out. It was the reaction or the treatment I received from law enforcement. And what they asked me was three questions. They asked me, was I sure wasn't my boyfriend? Am I sure I didn't let him in the window? And am I sure I'm not having sex and don't want my mother to know? I was devastated. I had never been with anybody. I had even dreamed of being sexual, of having those type of encounters with anyone. I'm standing here with a scar on my neck from where he had the knife imprint in me. I'm bloodied, I'm bruised, I'm battered. He beat me up, threw me in the couch, all of these things, evidence, my hair all over my head, clothes ripped from me. And I stand there open, violated, traumatized. And law enforcement, who I always thought were my superheroes, questioned me as if I had did something wrong. That was very devastating to have to endure as a child at 13 years old, to go through something so traumatic. And then the things that you thought were there to protect you and embrace you and be your superheroes with their capes on, planted a seed of doubt in not only in my mind, but in my family's mind, because with the story that happens next after that is that my evidence went untested for over 20 years. And I questioned a lot of things. I questioned on why that happened. Why did it happen to me? But now with the work that I do, it no longer concerns me why it happened. I know that there's work that needs to be done. When I started this work fighting for survivors, I didn't start out as trying to change or make a law named after me. I started out wanting to make a difference in the lives of others, because when Sergeant Welsh came to my home and told me 20-something years later about my evidence and how it sat on the shelf, he told me point blank, Lavinia, there's nothing we can do for you in this instance because you missed 2 statute of limitations, meaning 5 years after the initial assault happened, and then I think it was 10 years after my 18th birthday. I was devastated. I was devastated to find that out. I was even more devastated to know that we had DNA, the power of DNA in CODIS. This guy was sitting in CODIS, and they never tied him with my kid or my evidence. So that anger, I had already started advocating and speaking up about, because I went through my healing processes, but that anger pushed me over of knowing that there was nothing that 20,000 other cases they told me were in the state of Texas and over 450,000 nationwide they could do about it, is what I heard, that we didn't matter. What's done is done. It's over. Yes, we know now. We're sorry, but we're going to validate you now and say it did happen to you. You were a victim of a heinous crime, but oh well. And that's all I heard. And I'm like, oh well, hell. That's not how my story is going to end, because you just told me there are other victims out there, people who don't even know that their evidence is sitting on the shelf, because how the law started out with the Debbie Smith Act was they couldn't just take the money and open up all of these kits. They had the victims had to actually call in and say, can you reopen my kit? But if we didn't even know that our evidence was sitting on the shelf, it didn't make sense to me. So I had to do something. So I started out in 2004 fighting for these victims and trying to get things done in legislative where we can call to action for this. Well, this fight started then. And as I continued to fight, many forces joined with me. Many legislators joined the fight with me. Many people contacted me because they saw, you know, how I was coming at this. And I wasn't doing it for notoriety. I wasn't doing it for any kind of know my name. I was doing it for those who didn't know that they had been forgotten about, because that's how I felt. I had been forgotten. And I was like, nobody else deserves to live this way or feel this way or think that somebody is fighting for them, but they're not. And that was, I felt, my purpose. And so here, fast forward 2019, almost 20 years later into doing the fight, I joined forces with, Wendy Davis. I was with Wendy Davis, and when she lost her bid to Governor Abbott, she connected me with Victoria B. And so we were still trying to do the fight of removing the statute of limitations. And that was like a brick wall that we had fought for years trying to make that happen. And so we realized we had to do something with these rape kits still. And how would we do that? Victoria came up with the idea of crowdfunding. And that went over well, but still it was not the responsibility of, to me, the public, for you to give to our systems that are broken, to make sure that they do their jobs correctly. They should find the funding to make sure this happens. And then we, you know, Victoria, with our task force, we sit down with all of our ideas. I had the same ideas for years. This is what you need to do. I'm not an attorney, but it sounds right to me because this is how I was dealt with throughout this process. This is what I missed. This is what I needed as a victim. This is what I was denied. And so we put all of this, our passion in the paper. The group came together, and this is the origins and the aims of the Lavinia Masters Act was born. I was not expecting that at all when they said it would be the Lavinia Masters Act. As a matter of fact, I didn't want it named after me because I didn't want our system to fail again. I didn't want people to tie a face or an individual that they may, for whatever reasons, not like, because this is how I felt now. When you disregard a victim of sexual violence, you disregard everything about them. And we almost lose our identity in the process of doing so. So I did not want that tied to the Lavinia to this act, House Bill 8. I wanted this bill to stand and for everybody to vote for it and push it and protect all victims of the rape kit backlog. Victoria and the task force felt differently about that. And obviously they were right, because unanimously the House and the Senate voted for the Lavinia Masters Act. And the purpose of the act was established to correct systemic failures in handling sexual assault evidence effectively and fairly. And to support survivors was a key aim to enhance services and support systems for survivors seeking justice after sexual assault, because my system completely failed me in this process. And how the Lavinia Masters Act addresses rape kit backlogs and the justice delays is timely rape kit testing. Of course, my kit over 20 years had not been touched. And my perpetrator was picked up 8 months after I later learned after he assaulted me, and yet they did not tie my evidence with him being in CODIS. He served an entire 10-year prison term. I'm still out here living in fear, thinking he's going to do what he said he's going to do to me if he ever saw the police come back to kill me and my family. Even though I didn't got married, I moved on with my life, I still had that fear. He's incarcerated. I had no idea. He serves 10 years. He gets out and he commits the same crime, elderly woman. This time he breaks into an elderly woman's home, rape her at knife point. Of course, he goes back into prison because he violated his parole. That's how awful our laws were back then in Texas, where they were able to plea down and not take the sexual assault charges or even be considered a sex offender. So now he goes back to prison, now burglary of habitation versus violating somebody's grandmother. And so this is what happens when we don't timely test the rape kits. So this is something that had to change. And so the act requires rape kits to be tested properly to reduce backlogs and to speed up the investigations. Increase the accountability, because obviously If kids are sitting any amount of time, to me, over 90 days is utterly ridiculous. But increased accountability, that means nobody's being held accountable for their actions. We're just, collecting our paychecks. And that's, some officers get offended when I say that in training, but that's literally what it seems like. You're just there to collect your paycheck and go home. You're not accountable for your actions or the things that you're supposed to do. And people are suffering because of that. So the legislation enforces accountability measures to ensure proper handling and tracking of all rape kits. Additional resources allocation are allocated to support timely testing and improve outcomes for survivors. These attributes were so important when it comes to making them accountable for their actions with victims of sexual violence as far as these rape kits, because to know that something so heinous can happen to someone and you blatantly disregard them or what happened to them by placing my evidence in a room on the shelf or allowing it to get damaged or to collect dust or whatever reason or whatever happens, it's utterly ridiculous. And this is what happens, what's been happening. And then in 2011, before we were able to put teeth into what was really happening with it all, before the Lavinia Masters Act, the rape kit numbers had grew back up into the thousands again. And it was like, it's time out for all of this. This is foolery, is what I call it. It's utter foolery. And so this is what the Lavinia Masters did. And then there are the stories of impact and ongoing advocacy for legislative changing, survivor experiences. Survivors share their personal stories, illustrating how the act improved their access to justice and support. I absolutely love those phone calls or emails that I get from survivors that share that with me. And it's not to stroke my ego or to make me feel good about myself. I feel good because I feel that this continues to heal and bring out the resilience in that 13-year-old Lavinia Masters, because now the work is being done and it's being monitored and people are being held accountable, and survivors are finding their voices and they're knowing that they can do the same thing that Lavinia does or can do better. And it's just, I absolutely love that, because we are finding our way. We are understanding what resilience is. We are understanding the work that we do is making a positive impact on other survivors. And not just survivors, but our communities as a whole, because we are learning to find our voice and to hold people, not just the perpetrators, but the officials, those that hold our systems that stand in places and say, we support you or we create these laws to protect you. We're also holding you accountable for the promises that you made. So when I hear those stories, I get those emails, I'm elated, because I'm like, somebody's fighting for you. And you should never feel alone, and you should never feel that you have been forgotten about. Our advocacy efforts, advocates work persistently to strengthen legal protections and raise awareness about the act's impact. I absolutely love that. Like Crystal was talking about the SAB, the organization that we're part of, the Survivor Advisory Board, an extension of TASA. I absolutely love that, because we have that impact. We are a united force as survivors, and we do these type of things when we go and we give our input on different laws, or we come up with ideas or creations or how things can be amended. And that's all tapping into our resiliency as survivors and supporting one another and knowing where what I may have lacked in one area, another survivor on the board, she has that strength, and we put it all together and make something beautiful for our entire systems and for our entire communities. And for, our rape crisis organizations, which we also work for, coming with our ideas of how we can set things up or how we can work together, a collaborative effort through it all. And that builds all of our resiliency. And let me see, and there's continuous efforts underway to enhance the act, ensuring that stronger protections and better support systems happen with our ongoing legislative change. That's one thing about me now. I absolutely love doing this work. I'm not really a political person. I don't like to follow the rules of, they say do it the political way. I like to do it the way that I feel it's best for me and how things affected me and how things will work for me. I try to stay respectful with it all, but I love that we can do things as a collaborative effort with survivors, with advocates, with law enforcement, with all of our systems, and we can make these ongoing changes to continue to support survivors of sexual violence and make sure that we are treated fairly and we get the things that we deserve after our trauma. My first objective, fostering resilience in survivors of sexual trauma. Resilience is a practice, not a trait. One second. This is different from, I'm sorry, I'm not a technical person. Because I knew this was going to happen. I got my laptop with me. I apologize. So understanding how we cultivate resilience. A trait is generally considered an enduring characteristic or quality that is naturally present within a person. Traits such as optimism, introversion, or patience are often seen as stable aspects of one's personality. Innate tendencies shape how we perceive and respond to the world. Traits can be influenced by genetics, early life experiences, and while they might evolve over long periods, they are usually regarded as relatively fixed. Versus a practice, on the other hand, is something we do deliberately and repeatedly over time. Practices are learned behaviors, habits, or rituals that can be developed, refined, and strengthened through definition and effort. So when we say resilience is a practice, we're saying it's not a trait. We emphasize that resilience is not merely an inborn quality that somehow have and others lack. Instead, resilience is cultivated through daily actions, our intentional strategies, and our proactive engagement with challenges. It's something we build by how we choose to respond, support ourselves, and seek growth, making it accessible to everyone regardless of their starting point. So our talking points is not born, it's built. We build our resilience brick by brick, breath by breath. And sometimes that is very difficult to have experienced something so heinous as sexual violence. Then you decide part of your healing processes is to work in this field. And it's also damaging sometimes to those who work in this field, because you take on those moments, that feeling, that weight you bear of survivors and dealing with them day in and day out. And you also have to take resilience and practice it and not see it as a trait. You have to know it's not born, it's built. And brick by brick, you have to breathe. You have to take your moments and time to understand this. We meet survivors where they are, not what we expect them to be. And we have to remember that. Some survivors are in places where you can't even fathom. I have dealt with certain survivors, and it takes my own breath away, because I'm like, oh my God, but I'm trying to keep my composure while I listen to their stories, while they're crying at my story. And I'm like, I want to scream, because of what happened to you. I want to put my hands around this individual's neck. That was too much torment for an individual. But we have to learn it's not a trait, it's a practice. We have to, every day when we wake up, we have to make that decision that this is what we're going to do. We have to learn how to take it in, let survivors be where they're going to be. We're going to meet them there. We're not going to have any prejudgment or expect them to be at a certain place or time. I don't care if she's 60, she could have just started wanting to go through a healing process 6 months ago. So she's a beginner in learning how to actually survive so she can start thriving after that trauma. And how do we do, what are some of our practices? Some of them are our personal practices of affirmation rituals, creative expression, or faith-based anchoring. One of my personal practices was my faith-based anchoring, because that's how I was raised. And then when I knew something that I was raised in, then I wanted to study it and learn it for myself and build on that. And that's what I built on, my faith in getting me through my trauma, because honestly, I didn't have faith in man anymore because of what I endured, and I felt I had to endure it alone. So my way of building myself back up and being reborn in all of this was on my faith, and then I later realized I did have creative expression, because I love to do poetry. I love to write. I wrote songs. I wrote poems. I expressed my anger. I journaled, and I didn't know that was something that you could do, but I knew I had to express myself. I had married at 18. And so I've been with my husband 36 years, but in that marriage, having a best friend or somebody to support you and having them to talk to you and not judge you or say, why are we talking about this again? Why are we talking about this every night? was amazing to me. And I didn't realize how therapeutic that was to have that individual to talk to you. And so these are just some of the things that we have to remember. And then you have the clinical practices. And I don't know if I included, no, I didn't include it in here, but we have different practices that we can do clinically. We have the trauma-informed therapy. We have survival-led goal setting, cultural competency, and then you have your community-based practices. You have peer support circles, healing retreats, and advocacy opportunities, just different things, different practices that we can do on a daily basis in order to build our foster resilience in survivors of sexual trauma, as well as within ourselves. We still have to take care of ourselves, the ones that do the work. So empowering oneself and others through lived experiences. The personal empowerment of using, hold on, my little picture got in the way. Okay. The personal empowerment, using personal trauma as a source of strength, fosters resilience and self-growth. You couldn't have told me 30 years ago that me sharing my story, speaking out about sexual trauma, fighting for others, helping others find their voices, encouraging others to use their voices, uplifting or supporting them would actually strengthen me and my resilience and my self-growth. Now it's like an addiction for me, for a better lack of words. It's like an addiction for me to be able to do this and to be, because it gives me strength. It gives me strength to see others empowered. It gives me strength to see others grow. And hopefully that the same thing happens for you that work in this field, to know that you're coming to not just to do a job, but you have compassion for what you do, and you really care about an individual's healing and how they move forward or progress after this trauma. So you should celebrate within yourself when you see them empowered, when you see them speaking up now, when you see them progressing from where they were even a day ago, a week ago. You see them moving forward in their processes, and you should celebrate that, because we do have personal empowerment from that, using my personal trauma as a source of strength. Because now I see I'm beyond this. I'm moving beyond this. I can speak about this. I'm not crying all the time. I'm not sheltered. I'm not, I'm not being bullied with things. I'm not accepting any type of abuse anymore, because that's what happens a lot of times with victims. It's like you expect trauma to happen to you. These were my expectations. Everything bad was supposed to happen to Lavinia because of the things that happened to me in my past, and nobody was there to protect me. Nobody was there to support me. Nobody put a hand out to say it's going to be okay, that this was not supposed to happen to you. This was not your fault. None of that happened for me. So I assumed I was supposed to expect abuse, and behaviors and toxic relationships with people, and people handle you any kind of way. But once I started being empowered from sharing, I was like, no, that's not the way it's supposed to be. And that's not the way it's going to be. So you should celebrate that, even as workers, when you see that and you see your survivors evolve, and when you see one another evolve, because you're all doing the work. And when you can see how Ebony used to be so timid when she talked to survivors about this, where now she's able to speak more freely and not be like, like there's some sort of intimidation or things make her feel uneasy when she deals with survivors of sexual violence. Empowering others. Sharing your lived experiences inspires and empowers others to pursue positive change. I absolutely love that, that we can do that. Our sharing our lived experiences, being a part of these groups, the Governor's Task Force, and being a part of the Survivor Advisory Board, and so many other entities that I'm a part of. I can't even remember half of them, but it's beautiful for them to listen to your story, your lived experience as a survivor, and say, you know what, Lavinia, I heard you, I see you, and I think we need to change this, or we can add this, or we can, and it empowers them. I love that, because now they want to pursue that positive change. You want to fight for us and fight for others, because you listen to those lived experiences as they empower us. Advocacy and change. My mouth is so dry, I'm sorry. Harnessing lived experiences build a foundation for advocacy and meaningful societal transformation. So this is what happens when we empower ourselves through our lived experience. It's advocacy and change is what we do. And we advocate, and we make a change. We make an impact in the lives of others. We make an impact in our community. We make an impact in our societies. We make an impact on the world. and I don't have to be the big face, as they call me in school, pie face. I don't have to be pie face out there and everybody face when I do the work. I just want to make sure the work is getting done because I want survivors to continue to thrive and continue to trust in our systems and know that they have their power to make those changes themselves, but just by using their voice. Some of the personal strategies for building resilience after trauma: self-compassion. Practicing self-compassion helps survivors treat themselves kindly and fosters emotional healing. That goes the same for survivors. You got to have self-compassion. We are our own worst enemies. We are our own worst critics. We beat our own selves up more than anybody else will beat us up. We think that others think a negative way about us or hate us so much or look at us with some sort of evil eye when it's actually not that way. We're our own critics. So we have to learn how to have self-compassion for ourselves, to say it's okay, for me to love on me. It's not being arrogant. It's not being conceited. When I said I got my peace, I'm gonna stay in my peace. It's a fortress to me. It's okay to have that for yourself because it's like old cliche. If you're not good for yourself, you can't be good for nobody else. See, that may be a little country how I say it in my version because I'm from the country, but you know what I'm trying to say. We got to have that self-compassion. The mindfulness techniques. Mindfulness promotes present moment awareness, reducing stress and enhancing resilience after trauma. This year, I learned about grounding. I have CIPD. It's like my nerves are deteriorating. And so I have real bad issues with my feet and my hand, like nerve damage. And so this is something that transpired after surgery 2 years ago. And so I had just started back learning to walk and everything. And I learned about grounding by going out. It was by accident because the doctor told me I can't ever walk without any shoes or something protecting my feet anymore. So I don't know what got into me, but one day the grass in the backyard just looked so peaceful. It looked cerebral. So I walked out there with no shoes on and I stood in the grass and it felt so good. And it's like I was one with myself. It's something just happened to me. And so I Googled it and I'm like, man, in grass and this feels good. And I learned that was grounding. I had never heard of that. Nobody ever told me about that in all my years of being a victim, being a survivor, being an advocate. I hadn't heard of grounding. And so it's something that I fell in love with. So I'll go in my backyard and I'll stand, in the grass and I'll just be one with me and nature and God and space and just breathe in, breathe out. And it feels so good. And just find your own mindful techniques. You don't have to do what everybody else does, but whatever relaxes you and just be in tune with yourself. And then your support networks. Establishing safe, supportive relationships provide emotional security and encouragement for survivors. Just those areas that are safe for them, support them. What we talk about stays among us. How we deal with this, is how we deal with it. I'm not judging you. I'm not saying this about you. I just want to make sure I support you and you feel safe in the space that you're in, that you can talk about your trauma. I'm not going to say, Lavinia, okay, that's enough. I've heard enough of this story. I'm not going to say you're taking too much into it. You're reading. We don't just find you networks where you feel the actual support. And if it makes you feel uneasy, if you don't feel safe there, maybe that's not for you. Maybe it's time for you to go somewhere else but you need to find that support. So your clinical practices for supporting survivor healing. You have trauma-informed care, which is prioritizes safety and trust to create supportive environments for survivor healing. You have your cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, as some of you say it, helps survivors reframe negative thoughts and develop coping strategies for recovery. And you have your survivor-centered counseling. Survivor-centered counseling empowers individuals by respecting their choices and promoting autonomy. When we go here, some examples, I want to give you some examples of that if I can make this work again. Of some examples of clinical trauma-informed care include establishing safety, trust, creating a calm, predictable environment in clinical settings where survivors are treated with respect, transparency, and consistency. If those that know me personally, my husband, his word is anal. He'll say about me how I am with my consistency. I thrive on, I need consistency. I can't I can't do on and off, on like flickering. I can't do that. I have to be consistent. That's one of my quirks of how I work. I have to be consistent. And if you're inconsistent with me, if you're inconsistent, you may see me. Yeah, you don't want to see me because I get irritated real bad. It's like a trigger for me. So we need, and their boundaries are honored in every step. Empowerment and choice, involving survivors in decision making about their care, offering them choices, and validating their autonomy as ways to restore a sense of control often lost through traumatic experiences. We feel like, I know I did. I lost control of everything that night. I felt that from that point on, I had to hold on to what I could. And when I realized I still didn't have control of a lot of things, but these are some of the things that we struggle with. So it's important as we work in this field and we advocate for others that we stress that, or we try to, make that seen to survivors that we want to try to give you back as much control as possible throughout the process of your healing, because it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary. Cultural sensitivity. Recognizing and respecting cultural, historical, and gender-related factors that have made affected survivors' experience and tailoring care to meet the unique needs of each individual. That is so important. What I learned in this journey, I dealt with, I think they were Hindu family members in one of my events, and they literally snuck in to hear me speak because they had seen things about me and they wanted to know more about sexual violence and how to get resources and how to get help. But they were there in terror. And one of the young women kept watching the back door because they were sure their husbands would follow them and find out they were here listening to Lavinia Masters talk about sexual violence. And I was like, wow, I've heard of cultures differences in how we experience things, but they were not respected, is what one told me, in a sense where they their husbands could violate them, things could happen, and they weren't supposed to report it to the police, and things were in their country. And it was sad to hear these things, but we have to be mindful of the different cultures and how we handle individuals when it comes to sexual violence and sexual trauma, because those fears can go beyond that sexual violence itself. That's just something you see on the surface, and that's what I've learned in the work. So we have to be mindful of that. Collaboration, building partnerships between clinicians and survivors, fostering open communication, and encouraging survivors to express their needs, preferences, and concerns without fear of judgment. The psychoeducation part of it, providing information about trauma, its potential impacts, and the healing process, helping survivors understand their responses and normalize their experiences. To me, one of the worst things you can do is say to me, Lavinia, you shouldn't be doing that, or it's like you're making me feel worse than what I already feel as a victim. But it's like you're projecting what you think, how you think I should be, or how I should be healed, or what I shouldn't be doing anymore, or how I shouldn't respond or react to this type. And that's something we have to be careful and mindful of, because you put a person back into isolation. You can damage them more than you can help them when you do those type of things. And so normalize their experiences with them until they get to a different space in that healing. Integrated care, coordinating with mental health, medical and social services to address the whole person, mind and body, rather than focusing on one aspect in healing and isolation. Of course, we talked about the CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. Of course, I know it's a widely used evidence-based form of psychotherapy that helps individuals identify and change negative patterns of thinking and behavior. So they got 3 common ways. You got challenging negative thoughts. For example, someone who believes I always fail at everything, and that was me. I'm always going to be abused. I deserve to be abused. Can work with a therapist and recognize the exaggeration, examine evidence to the contrary, and reframe it as sometimes I face challenges, but I also have successes. And those are some of our things that we can do now when we're dealing with survivors to help them realize the resiliency that they really have to go through, to deal with that. And then behavioral activation. For instance, someone feeling withdrawn may be encouraged to reconnect with a hobby, take walks, or reach out to friends. That's behavior activation, which we help them focus on engaging in activities that align with their values and bring a sense of pleasure and accomplishment. And then another one is exposure therapy, where we expose therapy is CBT technique designed to help individuals confront and reduce their fear of anxiety related to specific situations, thoughts, or memories. Over time, repeated exposure can reduce anxiety and avoidance behaviors. For example, someone can with social anxiety, which, believe it or not, I had. I know people like, Lavinia, you're always talking, you're the social butterfly. No, I was not the social. I was withdrawn. I would be there. I wouldn't say anything to anybody. I was nervous. I had that anxiety that, oh my God, they're going to see rape tattooed across my forehead. They're going to see me as a scorned woman. They're going to see me, you know, like just something was about me. And this is what I had when I dealt with people is that anxiety. So you have to start by imagining a social situation and progress to attending small gatherings and eventually participate in large events. And that's exactly what I had to do. I didn't like large events. I didn't like being too many people made me nervous because I need to be able to watch an individual because I thought I had like this eye to see that this is a sex offender, this is a pedophile, this is this. And I had to make myself aware. In large crowds, that was overwhelming. I couldn't do it in large crowds. So that exposure therapy is something that I think is a beautiful thing that we can help out with, help survivors out with. Then, of course, our community-based approaches to empower survivors. Like we said, we had peer support groups. Peer support groups provide survivors a safe space to share experiences and build resilience together. We have our education programs where educational initiatives raise awareness and equip communities to understand and address sexual trauma effectively. I still think that we need to fight a little bit more for our education programs when it comes to raising awareness about sexual trauma, the effects, the aftermath, warning signs, triggers, all of that. This education needs to be continuing in our society, not just with law enforcement, but in our homes, in our schools. And it's not a one-time thing that we can do. I can't just give you a webinar today. You absorb everything. You've learned it all. You've got it. No, this is something that needs to continue. You'll be amazed at how many people I encounter and they're like, what's the rape kit backlog? What's the rape kit? What's this? You know, why does that matter? And then when I explain it to them and I tell them my story, it's like, oh my God, Lavinia. And I'm like, you didn't know that? But you're in the criminal justice system, or you're in this part, or your dad is this, you know, the chief of police here. But you'll be amazed at how many people we don't put it on the news every day. There's no PSAs that's running all day long to talk about sexual violence like we do other things in society. So this education programs are so important to me, and there are enough survivors, enough advocates, enough rape crisis centers to make sure that this happens. And I hate to hear the word funding. We can't allocate the funding for it. We find funding for, and this is my personal rant, we find funding for absolutely everything in this country. And we definitely need to find funding to continue to protect and educate our individuals. Because if you don't know, if children in the schools don't know what to look out for, if it's normal for a cousin or a brother or uncle or grandpa to come into their home and violate them, or things happen, this is what they expect. They don't know that I can really cry out to my school, or I can cry out to a counselor, or I can make this, you know, I can go to the library, excuse me, and make something online. I can do something for myself, because my family have almost normalized it by, I trust my mother, I trust my father, and they allow these individuals to come in, and they're not seeing or saying anything is wrong. You would think, because as a child, in a child's mind, I'm thinking, you should know me. You protecting me. And then God forbid their own mothers and fathers violate their children. So we need these constant programs of education to raise awareness. They can have warning signs. They're doing the sex trafficking. You know, people, you think your friends are in school, but kids don't know this. You know, our social media takes over everything, and they're on social media every day. And what looks good on social media is what they believe it is, and that's not the true reality. There's danger out there, but if they're not made aware of that, it's like we all fail, you know, as a society. So our education programs, I am a big proponent for those. And then the safe spaces. Creating safe spaces enables survivors to heal collectively in environments free from judgment and stigma. That is so important, to have that space. because we feel like as victims, as a victim mentality, that we are misunderstood so much. Nobody sees me, understands me for who I really am. I'm trying to communicate, I'm trying to articulate it to you, but you don't want to see, you don't want, and I don't know if it's you don't want to, or you just can't, or you just fail in that area. But when you create those safe spaces for us where I can come in here, I can talk about my feelings, you help me validate them. It's okay to feel this way. It's okay to be triggered. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to have bad days. It's okay for things to overwhelm me at times. It's okay for those memories to come up. It's okay to feel like I walk alone at moments, but as long as I tap back into my resilience and realize that I don't have to stay there. But we need those spaces because that's what those safe spaces help build. They help build that resilience in all of us. Brick by brick is what it's doing. So survivor-centered counseling stands as a transformative approach within the field of trauma recovery, placing the individual's strength, choices, and lived experience at the heart of therapeutic process. Far beyond the remit of traditional models, survivor-centered counseling seeks not only to treat symptoms, but also to empower individuals, reinstating agency, fostering resilience, and creating pathways to meaningful healing. And so I'm not gonna go. I can send you guys notes because I love to talk. So if you want some notes at the end, that could be something we can send. I can send you some notes. But survivor-centered counseling is rooted in the recognition that survivors are experts in their own experiences. Rather than prescribing a rigid path to healing, this approach honors individual autonomy, respects their personal boundaries, and adapts interventions to meet survivors' unique needs. One of the worst things we can do as survivors, what I used to do, I used to always try to compare myself to another person that I saw move along in their healing phases. And it used to disappoint me because I was like, why am I not there yet? And I didn't want to, be an imposter and be an imposter syndrome. I wanted to be where I was at. And I had to finally let that go. It's like, she's here. That's good. I don't know if she's been through all kind of therapy. I don't know what all she's been through to get there, or he's here. And I have to remain here until it's my time. That's a decision I had to finally make with myself. And I also realized that took tapping into my resilience to understand that I'm not going to rush. I'm not going to fake. I'm not going to try to be something that I'm not. I'm going to be Lavinia until Lavinia gets to that space. And that's something that I had to learn. And it empowered me at the same time. I'm not going to try to move forward or beyond my healing time that I need to be, because I have to be whole, not just for the world. I got to be whole for me, because I got to take care of me first. Something I had to learn, and that took resilience. So key principles are not autonomy and choice, empowerment. The counseling relationship is structured to increase your sense of control and self-efficiency. Strengths-based perspectives, counselors highlight and build upon survivors' inherent strengths and resilience instead of focusing solely on the pathology of it. Safety, creating safe spaces. Like I said, non-judgment environment is essential for trust and openness. Collaboration, survivors and counselors work together as partners in the healing processes. And if I could just go back to my creating safe, I've got here non-judgmental environments, essential for trust and openness. Let me tell you something. If I don't feel safe with you, you're not gonna have access to my openness. That's just the way I am. If you give me a red flag and I know as a survivor, I'm supposed to be in this space and feel safe. If you throw off red flags as an individual that's supposed to advocate for me or a counselor, you're not going to get it. And we have to be mindful of that when we're dealing with individuals, when we're advocating, when we're speaking, and how we handle individuals, even if we don't know they've been through trauma. Just our encounters with day-to-day people, because I have to look at that. Nobody knew. I thought that everybody knew I had been a rape victim before I shared it with the world, but they didn't know that. So I had a way that I carried myself as that victim, and I didn't understand that. So now that I'm aware of how society really is, and how I know that there are many survivors who are not speaking, who have not shared their stories, who have not come out and told what happened, I'm now mindful how I treat individuals, or how I try to make individuals feel safe around me, because now that's my heart, that's my compassion. And I get a lot of people that reach out to me, and it can be people doing just news stories on me, and they're like, Lavinia, can I call you later? I'm like, sure. They'll call me later, and they disclose with me because they felt safe with me. And that's something I hold precious. And I pray that other individuals that work in this field or that advocate or that has been in my shoes as a victim turned advocate hold that same anointing, where they hold that precious, to know that I have a gift that I can make people feel safe, and I want them to feel safe when they're around me. And so I just had to elaborate on that, because that is so important. And we lose so many people, or we can discourage so many people along this path of healing by what we project upon them and not allowing them to feel safe. But this is a work that we said we now want to do. My second objective is systemic barriers in survivor-led advocacy. First responders, from gatekeepers to change makers. I consider all of us first responders, not just law enforcement, but we're part of the people after someone endures sexual trauma. We're the first ones that they have to encounter. We're the first ones that they have to have an impression made upon them. And so we're no longer the gatekeepers, we're the change makers. We're fighting for them, we're speaking up for them, we're making laws for them, we're encouraging them to help us implement laws, to give their voices, to give their ideas. And so that's the difference now, from previous past of the systemic barriers, is where they didn't really allow survivors or didn't recognize our voices and the power that we had from our lived experiences, although traumatic, could make changes in the laws. And so one of my talking points is, when my rape kit sat untested for over 20 years, it wasn't a backlog, it was a message to me that you don't matter. And I hate to sound so bitter when I say that, but I was very bitter. And I do get agitated still now, not because of I'm in that space, because I know sometimes if we don't continue our fight, if we don't continue to speak up for survivors, if we don't continue to do the work, this is the attitude that can creep back in, is that you don't matter. And we'll have backlogs, and we'll have, all kind of idiotic things happening in society when it comes to victims of sexual assault. And because we basically say you don't matter when our system fails us and these barriers are there. So that's what I felt. I felt that I didn't matter. And I like I said, I don't want anybody else to feel that way that has been through what we've been through when it comes to sexual violence. That you matter. And whatever I can do to assist, I'm going to do it. Whoever I can reach out to, I'm going to try to reach out to, because I don't want any victim feeling they're left behind. I'm like the movie Troll. I love cartoons like Trolls. He said, no troll left behind. That's my mindset. None of you will be left behind once my hands are on it. First responders are often the first voice a survivor hears. That voice must be trauma-informed and not trauma-inducing. If I come to you as an advocate, as a resource, as a crisis center, a law enforcement, whatever, my first encounter, you should not induce more trauma upon me like the officers did that night by asking me those questions. You should be that voice, that face that says, I'm here for you. I see you, Lavinia. I'm going to do all I can to support you. I'm sorry what happened to you. What happened to you was not your fault. We're going to get through this together. These are some of the things that I should have received, that every victim of sexual violence should receive, but they're not. But I know that everybody here does, because that's why you're here this morning. So this should be the first thing they hear, that must be trauma-informed. And I know you get all this training, so you know what trauma-informed looks like. So, objective 2, systemic barriers in survival advocacy. Systemic barriers, first responders must recognize the rape kit backlogs. This is what I understood about my case. You had to understand the rape kit backlogs. It's a domino effect. If we don't do things right the first time, this is what happens. It shouldn't even be a backlog if the jobs are done with due diligence, but this is what happened. Another barrier we must recognize is that we're dismissive in our intake practices, how we do things. It's like sometimes we're just haphazardly. Like I said, it's a 9 to 5. I got to pay my mortgage and I got to pay my car note, and I'm just going to go in and do what I have to do. And we dismiss how we intake these victims of sexual violence and how we do things, and making sure they're in the right direction, or the right area, the right resources, the right category, how we do it. the lack of coordination across the systems, sending a survivor or a victim of sexual violence from one location here at the crisis center, and you tell them to go over to the Justice Department and for funding for this, and it's just not coordinated, and they're not treated respectfully over here, and then go to your DA's office for this, and they're told something else. It's like a mess, like a cesspool, like chaos all over again of being a victim of sexual violence. It's like I'm being systemically assaulted now, because now there's no coordination. And in our culture and our racial biases, unfortunately, we still deal with those. Some instances is not as open, is not as obvious. Sometimes it's subtle, but I'm sorry to be the one to tell you today, it's still there. It's still real. How we deal with people. And like I said, I'm not political, so I'm not gonna get all off into that, but it's here. How we see people, how we deal with them, and sometimes our mindsets, we have to be careful how we do that, and how we try to classify people a certain way because of our own cultural and racial biases. And so these were some of the barriers that we endured. And I hate to say it, but one of the things that I struggled with, was because I was a little Black girl that was raped in the projects, and you just like basically dismissed me. And that's how I started feeling as I grew up, and I started experiencing racism, on a level that, my mother kind of sheltered me, because and my grandma, they didn't raise us that way. Everybody was all the same. We were just different colors. If I cut you, you're gonna bleed the same red blood I bleed. And that's how we were raised. We're all one, and because like I said, we're a faith-based family. So you are all my sisters and brothers. I saw no color, and so when I got older and I saw how I was treated and things people would say to me, I was like, wow, this hurts. This really, really hurts. How you would treat me or disrespect me because of the color of my skin, or the money I don't have, or the neighborhood I grew up in. It just really hurt. Or how we do things as African Americans versus how Caucasians may do it, or Hispanics may do it, or Pakistanians, or whatever, Africans may do it. And so that was very hurtful to know that these are some of the systemic barriers that we had to deal with, and that unfortunately we're still dealing with today when it comes to these laws and our survivor-led advocacy. And the Lavinia Masters Act, a survivor-led reform, where we talked about how it mandates the timely testing and improves our tracking and transparency, and it centers survivor voices in policy. I absolutely love that. Our voices matter, and they are important, and they are necessary, and they are needed in these instances when it comes to these laws, because we've experienced this trauma, and we know how we felt. And even though my experience may differ from another survivor's, or my feelings may differ in a certain area of that trauma, we are still the same in what we've been through, in a sense where we have those chaotic emotions that we're dealing with. And so we know how it made us feel. We know what can possibly make it better for us, how you can change this. Whatever my loophole was in my area may not be a loophole in another survivor's area, but this is what happened, and this needs to be changed because of how we missed it when it came to his or her crime. So it all works together. So centering survivor voices in policy is major. What first responders can do is lead with empathy. This is the part where law enforcement don't like me when I say this, because some of them just don't show empathy. Some of them are like, I'm the law around here, and I'm going to be just as abrupt and brutal and crass with you as I want to, because I'm the police. And if you can't get past me, or your story won't go any further if you don't listen to me, or if I got an attitude about this, so I feel a certain way, I'm not going to write that down in the report. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to recommend this. So I'm not going to take the report. I'm going to tell you, that was your boyfriend. It's really not a sex. I'm being your judge and your jury and everything in the beginning, because I don't know how to lead with empathy. Know the law. Know the law. No, and this is why my husband called me anal, because I nitpick sometimes. When I run into random law enforcement, and I'm not doing it for me. I'll ask them, You know, it's like certain things you'll see them doing, it's kind of agitating, harassing folks. And I said, have you heard of the Lavinia Masters Act? And they're like, what? And I said, what do you guys do with your rape kids? Rape kids, there's some kind of law about that. You know, I said, what? I said, what does that law entail? They don't know. You know, and then you find a lot of advocates that work in the field, they don't even know. And it's not just my law, it's several laws that deal with victims of sexual violence. Know the laws, know the laws, not just for you, but know them for the survivors that you encounter. Know how to protect them, know how to tell them what's not being done right for them, how they're being treated poorly or unfair. Give them the tools and the resources that they need. And part of that is you being knowledgeable of the work that you do. And that's knowing the laws that are implemented for survivors of sexual violence. Partner with survivor-led organizations, organizations such as TASA, the Governor's Task Force. A lot of the organizations now, they are bringing in, a lot of the organizations that I'm in, they want me there because not only as an advocate, but I am also a survivor. And they see the value in that because it gives them a lot of insight when they do the work. And I had one tell me, they said, Lavinia, you're so intelligent. And I'm like, no, I just lived a horrific experience because I bring to the table things that they never thought about to do, you know, but when they say it, it makes sense to me because, and the reason why it makes sense to me is because this is what I desired when I was a victim, but it wasn't there for me. So it make all sense to me for me to say it. And I sound like I'm intelligent where I'm just telling you what I lacked, what I needed, what I desired as a victim trying to survive, where you're just, your learned experience and dealing with survivors, but each victim that you encounter is not the same. So, but you put them in sometimes in the same category, and it's not fair in an instance where that lived survivor led coming into your organization, sharing with you, are you partnering with them and collaborating with them is important. And I encourage that for every crisis center, every representative that has an organization out there, that you connect with some survivor in your area that you feel can work with you, and you keep them a part of your board or your staff or something, or your right-hand person that they can call and share. I would absolutely love to share that because I get a lot of calls and I'm like trying to pass them off. I'm like, contact this person here, they're in your area. You know, I call some of the advocates I know because they see the value in that. And there's enough work for all of us to work. There's enough survivors that are empowered and strong, that stand in their resilience enough to work with you guys to help you in your path of healing, helping others heal. And be accountable and vocal about it. Be accountable as advocates. Be accountable as first responders as you speak. You know, I took on this mission, I took on this assignment, and I will be accountable for my actions and things I do. I don't always do things right. I don't mind apologizing if I'm wrong, and I'm speaking of myself. I can accept constructive criticism from others because I want to be better in my work. I believe in agreeing to disagree on things. You know, I can take things with a grain of salt, or I can take it and I can let it weigh in heavy on me, and maybe it'll help me evolve in my work because I always want to improve when I work with others. I don't want to be that trauma-induced individual with someone when I'm dealing with them. I don't want to reflect my pain or my trauma on anybody else, you know, and I will be accountable and I will be vocal. Those that know me, Lavinia gonna say something. My issue is I have to pray first because sometimes it don't come out the right way. Because I get my passion for this sometimes it's so overwhelming to me because I'm like, it's look, we're in a new age now. We have all this modern technology, we have all these resources, we have all these survivors, we have all of these things for us now. And a lot of this stuff, hey, no more excuses. Nope. So I'm speaking out. I'm speaking out. I'm speaking up, and I'm gonna say it loud. And I pray that everybody else, as first responders and advocates, you learn to do the same thing. Don't be shy. You can do it. We need you. We depend on you. So understanding institutional challenges in responding to sexual trauma. There's the bureaucratic delays. Institutional red tape causes slow responses, increasing survivors' frustration and distress. I get frustrated even now. I know many of you are frustrated. I try not to get political, but how they are messing with our funding from the head of state, not seeing the validity of our programs, the importance of fighting the work that we do for survivors of sexual violence. So when we scale back on funding or we try to find a way not to disperse those checks, we always go for those, to me, who you think are not important. And that's victims of sexual violence. That's that you don't matter attitude. That's what I see. That's what I feel when these things happen. And you see the memorandums, or you see the cuts, or you see, well, we don't have this. Is you're saying once again, you're putting us back. We're going backwards instead of forwards when it comes to survivors. You don't matter. So I'm going to cut your money. You should be okay. Just because I look good doesn't mean I am good. And that's just a reality of it. You know, you can look like you're just as happy and just as gay and having a good time in life, and you can be miserable and torn up on the inside because you never got the help, the resources to do the things, or even know that you needed healing. One part that I always tell people is that I didn't even know I was a victim. I didn't know, I had I've been a victim of a violent crime, but I didn't understand I had a victim mentality. And I didn't understand early that I had to come out of that and I had to grow and heal from that, because nobody ever explained that to me. It was just my way of living now. It was just normal for me to be mean and hateful and didn't trust anybody and all these mixed emotions, because I'm protecting myself now. I'm protecting Lavinia because nobody else will protect me. You know, I couldn't trust anybody. You didn't want to fight for me before. Why do I expect you to fight for me now? And so these are just some of the things that happen when you got those bureaucratic delays. You increase our frustration and our distress in the processes of our healing. Resource limitations. Lack of adequate resources hampers effective support and timely intervention for survivors. We need our resources. They need our resources. You need those resources. How can you effectively impact the survivor or effectively do the work that you do, and you don't have the necessary resources to make sure in a timely way to give it out to them to make sure they can to heal properly? This is why you're here. This is why you do the work that you do, is to help them in their healing processes, to help them get back on their feet, to help them to overcome, to help them understand that the things that happen to them is not their final say so from that trauma. But when we don't have the resources that are limited, it delays all of that, because now they're depending on you, because you made a call. You made a call to action and say, this is who I am. This is my rape crisis center. This is who I work for. I'm the leader here. This is what we're going to do for you. This is why we're open. This is why we're getting this, funding. We're here for you. But now when I come to you for help, oh, Lavinia, we don't have that. We can't do that. We don't have access to that right now. They cut the money out. This is what happens when you do. This is all we hear again is, I don't matter. This is what I hear. I don't matter. And then insensitive practices, unempathetic institutional responses worsen the survivor's emotional trauma and hinder our recovery. Sometimes we do things, and I don't do it, but I put myself in that boat because I hold myself accountable for others when we do this work. And I do that with pride because I made a promise to survivors. I made a promise to God, and I made a promise to myself that I would do all I can to fight in this field. So when I don't speak up, even when I see that my institutions are being unempathetic towards others, I'm just as guilty as they are, especially if I'm made aware about it, because we're further damaging and causing that trauma to victims of sexual violence. And they have so many, insensitive practices that they may do or consider, and we have to be mindful of that. So be vocal, speak up about it. If you are in these crisis centers, you're working, I don't care if the executive director is this person and you feel intimidated, but if you know your executive director is not doing things that's their response to these certain survivors are not right, you need to be vocal about it. I would go to that individual first, and talk to them, because sometimes we get so like robots sometime in this work. And I know sometimes it's almost like you get compassion fatigue, and you almost grow callous at times, because you hear it all the time. And you have to learn how to build and keep continuing your own resilience throughout this work, because it can be tedious and have that effect on you, but we don't want it to bleed out on survivors that come to us for help and resources. And then the significance of survivor-led advocacy efforts in empowering survivor voices. So survivor-led advocacy empowers individuals to share experiences and influence policy for meaningful change. I talked about that earlier. It's just empowering our voices is what you do when you allow us to lead in advocacy. I love that Texas does that. that they welcome survivors to come, to offer testimonies, to come and speak and give their ideas and to sit at the tables with them. That's a beautiful thing, because some states, they talk it, but they really don't want that survivor there. They'll hear your story. Oh, we're sorry that happened. We're going to do this. But when it comes behind closed doors, they really won't welcome a survivor to be there in their presence. But Texas, I can honestly say they are different in that aspect. And I appreciate that, how they do that. And they allow us to come in, and they have so many ways to come in. If it's through TASA, if it's through the governor's task force, if it's through the Justice Department, whatever it is, they welcome our voices to come in, because they know we can do a meaningful change for other survivors of sexual violence, addressing our systemic shortcomings. This advocacy highlights our gaps in our systems, pushing for reforms that better serve our survivor needs, promoting our justice and reform. Survivor-led efforts drive justice by centering survivor needs in policy and social reforms. Our voices are vital to the work. Our lived experiences are vital to this work of fighting with you, along beside you. That's why we're here. That's one of the purposes of that's the main purpose of this Survivor Advisory Board with TASA, is to be like a backbone for not just TASA, but for the crisis centers, and supporting you in ways that you feel you need supported. I know one, I can't remember, you may be on here, but one of the crisis centers actually reached out to us, I think last year, and I worked with the young lady to set up her own advisory board within her crisis center. That was an assignment that I had. And so, because she saw the validity of survivor voices, and so she was like, hey, let's just do our own board, survivor advisory board within our crisis center, and we'll go from there. So that's a beautiful thing. And I suggest that to every, and that's why we're here as our board, to help you through those processes. If you need our assistance, well, we can help you connect your voices of survivors and through the processes, and set these things up so you can work effectively through our systems and know the significance of our survivor-led advocacy efforts. The impact of our delayed of justice on survivor and the justice on survivor well-being is definitely an emotional distress for those delays. Justice delays cause significant emotional distress, impacting the survivor's mental health and recovery process. If I tell you, over 20 years of not being able to have justice served, I didn't even know that I wouldn't have the opportunity for justice. It was just waiting. I felt alone, like I was just in a dark space. And no matter what people would tell me, no matter how my husband encouraged me, I was still distressed in that moment, because I wondered, when would my help come? When will I find out who this perpetrator was? When will I stop walking by myself and being afraid when somebody walks up on me real fast? When will I ever be able to, raise up the windows in my house? First of all, I didn't want windows in my house. We were buying a home, and my husband was like, you have to have windows. But I didn't want windows in my home. I didn't leave my doors unlocked. My poor son, when he was little, he was like, you get in my mama's car, lock her doors. He was hurry up locking the doors on the car. This is how I lived, because it was emotional distress from the delays of not knowing what happened with my evidence, and erosion in the trust system. And that's exactly what it was. My delayed justice weakens my trust in my legal and social support systems. I had absolutely no trust in the system. And when I started my healing processes and I started fighting and working, you know what? Since I felt they lacked the knowledge of knowing how to be there for us and knowing how they were destroying our trust, how about I help them versus fighting against them? And that was my mindset. I'm going to help them in this process. I'm going to help build those bridges so we can work together in a collaborative effort, so these victims can be healed and helped, versus me being angry and bitter that they didn't support me like they were supposed to. I had to tap into my resilience as an individual to say, I'm going to help our broken system so they can, the things that, things being delayed for survivors of sexual violence, it won't happen again, or at least it gets better for them. And the risk of re-traumatization, that's exactly what happens. It re-traumatizes them. I went through a period after I learned that my perpetrator had been incarcerated, picked up, when I learned the whole MO, I was re-traumatized. It triggered me. I was so angry. And I was like, what? So it's like, I told Sergeant Wells, speak to me like I'm 2 years old, because I couldn't comprehend it. It's like my brain just turned into putty, silly putty. as he told me how my case was basically flopped, mishandled. And I couldn't grasp it. I couldn't grasp that, and so it re-traumatized me in that moment. And I was so disturbed. It took me about a month to regroup from all of that, just intaking how my case was being handled once I found out the truth. So those prolonged legal processes and not being able to go to court and not being able to stand before your perpetrator and see him serve for the crimes against you, it was just re-traumatizing to survivors, emphasizing the need for sensitive and timely responses. So this is why we must continue the fight that we do for individuals. This is why I stay in the fight. And like I said, I'm not leaving the fight until the good Lord take me home, because I feel there is so much for me to do. I will be that 70, 80-year-old woman if I'm still here to be speaking up for survivors of sexual violence, because I know that evil reigns on our earth, and I'm not expecting anything to just change overnight. So objective 3, we're going to get through this because I can't see how many more I have, but empowerment for first responders. Now it's about you. You're my first responder. Transforming pain into purpose, your role in the movement. You have a role that's very important to us in this movement. We depend on you. We look up to you. You are those experts that say, I'm going to get up every day and I'm going to deal with somebody else's trauma so they can survive, they can feel better about themselves. You may not carry the trauma, but you carry the responsibility to respond with dignity. And we appreciate that. We look forward to that from you. Your empowerment isn't just for survivors, it's for every professional who chooses to rise with them. So each and every one of you that are here, you made a decision in your professionalism to rise with us. And we see that. We see you, we hear you, just like we felt we were ignored. I know sometimes you feel that you are not seen or heard in the work that you do, but you are. And I think sometimes that we may take it for granted and not say thank you, or maybe you feel you can't get too personal with a survivor that you're working with. But from my standpoint, we see you and we hear you, and that's why it's so important that I feel I do things such as this about reminding us of our resilience. So how first responders can lead with courage and empathy. Courage is speaking up when systems fail. Advocate for reform within your department, and just speaking up, using your voice. Your voice is powerful too as an advocate for survivors of sexual violence. We need you. We need you to stand for us. We have stood alone by ourselves for so long. We may stand in unity as victims, but a lot of times standing there, all we know how to do is embrace one another. We don't have the know-how and the tenacity to do some of the things that you do and what you studied for and to be there for us. So we need you to be there. When those systems fail, we need you to stand up and say, hey, we can't continue to do this. We still need your voices. You have to reform within your own departments. Where you see it's not working, speak up for us. Empathy, listen without judgment to when we speak. Validate without interrogation. Don't make me feel like I committed a crime and you're there again to ask me, so did you know this young man? Were you outside? How late were you? What were you wearing? We don't, we can our personal feelings about certain things, we can keep them personal, in other words. And then survivor-informed solutions include survivor voices in training, policy, and protocol development. I cannot express that enough. There are enough. We have an entire sexual assault advisory board with TASA. We have different organizations. We have individual survivors that have their own organizations that are out there for you, and they are there to support you. Those lived experiences matter. So include them in your training, include them in your policies and your protocol development. Include them. You need them and we need you. And there are so many, I know so many advocates on here now that are probably on the advisory board with us. Their voices are amazing and powerful, and they can do so much for you, and you can be above and beyond in your work when you're working with survivors of sexual violence. Leading with courage, empathy, and survivor-informed solutions. Just some of the solutions, because I see my clock is winding down. It's empathy and leadership, courageous decision-making, survivor-informed solutions. That's effective leadership prioritizes your understanding and compassion towards those impacted, fostering trust and meaningful connections, Your courageous decision making. You demonstrate your courage by making those bold decisions, and your survivor informed solutions, incorporating your survivor perspectives. Ensure that solutions are relevant to victims of sexual violence, respectful, and effectively addressing our real needs. And practical activities for first responders, from awareness to action. Take care of yourselves. Knowledge is power, but action is transformation. You can have all the book sense you want. You can get every degree, all you want. But if you don't have any action, that's where the transformation comes in, doing the work. I got a couple of activities that's listed: empathy, mapping exercises. Reflect on how a survivor might feel during each step of your response process. In other words, put yourself like your mom, like my mom used to tell me, put yourself in their shoes. Now, how you think they feel, or how you feel now. And I'm like, wow, I didn't look at it that way. I was me when I said that. I could have done that a different way. So empathy mapping exercise, that's something that you can do every single day when you're dealing with a survivor. Reflect on how they might feel during each step of your response process. Survivor-led training, like I'm emphasizing. I'm not campaigning for myself. I'm campaigning for so many wonderful advocates out there that have this power and this courage to come and speak and be a part of something, so you can all make it great for us. Invite survivor advocates to co-lead trauma-informed workshops. They have so much knowledge to give. I have so many topics that I speak on. Policy audits, review intake forms, evidence handling, and survivor communication protocols for bias or gaps. Take that extra time to review those intake forms. Look for those mistakes. Look where maybe they didn't answer something properly. Look where maybe a worker may have filed something away, or they thought this was how they were supposed to do it. Evidence handling, that evidence is vital. That evidence is a lifeline. Had my evidence been damaged or lost or what have you, to this day, I still wouldn't have known that it was Kevin Turner that came in that house and raped me that night. Survivor communication and protocols for bias or gaps. Pay attention to all of that in your organization. You're not being a snitch, but you're being a snitch. So, but it has to be done. Certain things, because it's not about us in this instance anymore. It's about the work that we decided we were going to do, and that was for other survivors. Healing language practices. These are just some of the activities. Role play scenarios. Using affirming, non-triggering language with one another. These are things you can do within yourselves, your organizations, to make yourself better for the work that you do. Even if you do your practices or your workshops, you bring in advocates to come and do these workshops with you, and you practice with them. And how I remember, and I still do, I do with the Dallas Police Department. I go in with their training, the new detective training, and we do like role playing and how they interact with survivors. And sometimes, what they do, they don't tell them, those that don't know me yet, that I'm a real survivor of sexual violence. And so we'll do a case like that. And sometimes I'll blow them away because I can go into my true emotions because I remember that space. And it's like, whoa, what's happening here? But do those role-playing scenarios, because sometimes they're very eye-opening with people within your organization. But and use affirming, non-triggering language when you do the work. Affirmation for first responders. Speak life in your role. Speak life in what you do. Your words can either reopen those wounds or begin healing. Choose wisely and speak boldly. Daily affirmations, you can say, because you guys will have these PowerPoint. I respond with compassion, not control. I honor the dignity of every survivor I serve. I am a bridge, not a barrier to justice. I lead with courage, empathy, and accountability. I am a part of the solution. I rise with survivors. Just have your daily affirmations and make it a part of your practice every single day, because like we said earlier, it's not a trait that we naturally born with. Survivor-informed solutions in action. Lead with the survivor, not just for them. Survivor advisory boards, like what Tasa has with us, co-created curricula. When you make your curriculum for survivors and how you work with them, invite those experts or lived experience survivors that do the work, compassionate about it, took the extra initiative to be advocates. They're there to help you with that. Co-create that curriculum so they can know this is all we do with the task force. When we make laws for survivors of sexual violence, we get ideas from survivors everywhere. We have like a session, because it's for 2 years, the next session comes up, and we can do so much within those 2 years to make sure everything is survivor-centered and trauma-informed. Faith-rooted frameworks. Don't forget those who are faith-based. You know, make sure we are making doors or avenues or resources for everybody in this work. We don't just need allies, we need architects of change, and that's what you are. Unbroken, legacy and light, building a movement. Unbroken is a collective call. This work is not mine alone. It belongs to every voice that refused to be silenced. Let the world say survivors just didn't survive. We transform systems. Build a culture of hope, purpose, and collective healing. Fostering hope helps individuals communicate shared healing, empower resilience. Conclusion, your personal strength, survivors, they demonstrate remarkable personal strength and drives their journey toward healing and justice. Systemic reform are essential to create fair structures and support survivors, promote justice. Courageous leadership, marked with the courage and a vision like that of myself, inspires hope for change. Rise, closing affirmation, we rise. Rise is resilient in solidarity and empowerment. Say it with me, I am unbroken, I am powerful, I am called. You are not just a participant in this session, you are a change maker. Let's rise, let's reform, let's release what no longer serves us. And a bonus, I put on here a exercise for first responders and frontline advocates, and you will have this PowerPoint. So this is the Rise Debrief ritual, and you just follow the prompts on there on your own time. But I thank you for your time. I thank you for those who sat through the entire moments with me. And this is my contact information here. And if you have any questions, we'll go into the questions real quick. But if I know somebody had a major question that Crystal told me, and I wrote my answer down. I want to give you my answer real quick, if you don't mind. Give me one more moment. When somebody asks, advocates who work closely with survivors carry a heavy emotional load. Well, you asked, what can I give you back with you building your own resilience? And so first I said, acknowledge the impact, anchoring your purpose, and this has helped you build your resilience. Develop sacred boundaries, build reflective practices, find healing communities, celebrate your small wins, and invest in ongoing self-care. And those that want these notes I made for you, I can send those to you as well. But advocacy is a sacred work, it's a hard work, and while it is rewarding, it is also heavy. We often carry the stories, the pain, and the silences of those who trust us with their deepest wounds. And sometimes what weight shows up is exhaustion, as tears we cannot explain, as nights where we lie awake thinking about the survivors we serve. So how do we as advocates find resilience in the midst of that continuous exposure to trauma that is not our own, but becomes a part of our being? The first step is to name it. We must recognize that what we are experiencing is real. It's called secondary trauma, and there is no shame in acknowledging that the pain we encounter affects us too. In fact, it would be unnatural if it didn't. But here is where we find our strength. We remind ourselves of our purposes. Every day we show up, we are giving voice to the silence. Every time we help a survivor feel seen, heard, and believed, we push back against a world that is too often looks away. Our resilience is anchored in remembering why we do this work. Yet we cannot serve others well if we do not guard ourselves of our purpose, of ourselves. Boundaries are not selfish, they are sacred. Saying no when we need rest does not mean we are weak. It means we are wise. Reflection, prayer, journaling, or sharing with a trusted peer. These are not optional practices. They are our lifelines. And what I want us to remember is this, and I'm going to close. Resilience is not just about being unshaken. It's about being able to bend, but not break. It is about finding the courage to release what is not ours to carry so that we can continue walking alongside survivors with strength and compassion. So I challenge each and every one of you today to invest in your healing the way you invest in the healing of others. Celebrate the small wins you witness. Surround yourselves with community. Replenish your spirit, because when we model resilience, we are not just sustaining ourselves, we are giving our survivors a living example of hoping and action. This is how we strengthen our approach, not by trying to be unbreakable, but by choosing to remain whole. Thank you. I'm sorry, I was trying to speed through this, but thank you for your time. Like I said, that's my contact information. That's your bonus debrief ritual. And Crystal, you got the floor. And I thank you guys for hanging with me. And I'm so long-winded, but I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Man, we are perfect on time, 11:30.
All right.
Thanks again.
You're welcome.
Sorry, allergies are getting me today.
I
Um, Thanks y'all for being here. This webinar is worth an hour and a half of credit. We will be following up in an email with certificates for those of y'all who indicated a need for those. Right now they're running about 2 weeks. So if you've been with us, we've actually just put one out, and the second one for part 2 is going out next week, and then we'll have Lavinia's after that. So please continue to join us. Like I said, next Friday we are taking a little break, and then we will come back in September with the last 3 parts of our Survivor series. So thanks again, y'all. And if you need a certificate, I saw that in the chat box. Please just let me know. Just send me an email and I can get you a copy of one. So,
And thank you all. I'm just now opening the chat. I had it closed because I get distracted easily. But thank you all. I see all of your kind words. I appreciate you. And like I said, that's my information. If you have any other questions, you want any of the notes or anything that I was reading, just shoot me an email and I'll send it right over to you. But thank you again. I appreciate all of you for your time and your kind words. I really do. Thank you. It means the world to me.